Guys, the main concern that I have is that we don't fall off the back of the stage here, so let's watch that.
Good tip.
I hope you're all having an absolutely brilliant festival. I am Aarti Joshi, I'm a presenter on Go Radio, and I'm also a life coach, which I don't know if I told you guys before we did this panel.
Thank God.
Get coaching.
Yeah.
I'm so delighted to be hosting this. I mean, honestly, see, to be surrounded by you three is a joy. And I think just to say to you all, today's very much a conversation. So there'll be some time for questions at the end. But sit back and enjoy what these brilliant people have to say. Are you laughing at that, Chris? We're going to be looking at two different processes, in many ways the same, many ways different. They sort of overlap, songwriting, book writing, and we're going to be talking about what happens when those processes take place. So where do they start? Where do they go? I imagine our conversation will sort of loop and spin a bit and go in and out of each other, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. First of all, Frank, you don't need an introduction. We're in your house today. How are you?
I'm all right. I had a later night than I planned last night. but otherwise, I'm very well. I'm very happy to be at last evenings with all these wonderful people.
Were you exploring Edinburgh?
No, sleeping.
Oh, nice.
This morning. But last night we were in the pub.
Amazing.
Was anyone else in the pub last night? Yeah.
Listen, that's a place to be on a Thursday night.
It was the surprise pub. It was very cool.
It's not like you're doing anything today.
No, I was empty diary today.
Quiet day. Now, Chris, you're a writer and recording artist. I'm going to read this about you while you're sitting next to me, which is always a bit weird, right? You're based in Brighton since 1999. You have released 10 albums, and you've written for a range of publications as well, one of them being The Morning Star. You've toured internationally, you've composed music for the World Health Organization and also the Natural History Museum. Very impressive. And you are one of the most consistently critically acclaimed British songwriters and artists of the past decade. You've had a huge influence on a number of artists, Frank included. And I believe, Frank, that you called Chris the finest English folk writer we've had for 50 years.
I'm going to say this while he's sitting next to me. When I started out, all I wanted to do was be Chris TT.
Me too.
Yeah. And do you remember the first time we met? I was so starstruck, and it just wasn't on your kind of list of menu options for what my behaviour might be fueled by. So you were just like, "Are you all right?" I was like, "You're fucking Chris TT," and you were like, "Yes." I remember it well.
Was that trade?
I think so, yeah.
I stopped you on the street, didn't I? Outside the borderline.
You did.
Me and Dave chased you down. You Chris TT.
I remember that vividly because it was scary.
Do you feel okay sat in the middle of these two? Do you want me to move you?
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's amazing. It's funny how things go, isn't it?
I used to sing in an American accent until I listened to the 253. All my songs before that, I was meow, 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 like every other band in Essex. And then I listened to your music and was like, this person actually talks and sings the same. Maybe I should do that. And here we are on a panel together.
Yeah.
So began. Now, Jay, you're better known as Beans on Toast. 18 years in the industry. We've got 3 books, although I decided to tell you you'd written 18 books earlier.
18 books, Aarti asked me if I'd written. So I feel bad now having only written 3 and a collection of children's books.
You are quite prolific, so I'm sure before the end of today they'll be done. Now, 17 albums, insanely talented and a bit of a cult figure as well. You're known for simple songs that tackle big issues and political protest songs for the modern day, as well as what I really loved about this, honest and open love songs. I'm so here for that.
Yeah,
so I just thank you so much, and a round of applause for all these guys, please. A big one. Now, we're here to talk about your writing process in whatever way that it might come across. I would ask you, each of you, for one word that you would use to describe your process, just to kick us off.
Are we talking about book writing or songwriting?
You can decide whichever one you'd prefer.
I was going to choose a pretentious word.
Go for it.
Ineluctable.
Oh, what does that mean?
Yeah. It just means it's kind of slightly unexaminable. Do you know what I mean? Just difficult to look at straight on.
Nice.
Yeah. And is that for books or songs?
More for songs, I'd say.
Okay.
The books thing, we're launching straight in. I got asked there was interest in me writing a book whenever it was, sort of 10 years ago, and I'd written articles and I'd written short stories here and there, and I thought it'd be easier, just string 50 of those together over 6 months, and Bob's your uncle, you got a book. And that's not how you write a book at all. And I sort of launched into it, and then quite quickly went, oh no, I've made a huge mistake. And I found it really, really difficult and really challenging.
Fair days. What's your word?
I mean, it is a lot harder writing a book than writing a song, isn't
Yeah.
it? Or even a whole album.
But that's the whole thing. I just figured it'd be like writing an album, because
Yeah.
each chapter's a song or whatever, and that was my sort of model for it. But it's like writing a suite of concept albums. Do you know what I mean? Which I haven't done yet, thank God.
Yeah, maybe like project management, although that's 2 words.
You can have that.
It's a really horrible, dry word, but project management. Because when you have the ideas, you don't necessarily know what they're going to be. Like, sometimes I wish some of my songs I hadn't put out as songs, and I'd made short stories out of them instead, something like that.
How do you tell the difference, though, Chris, when you're in that process? How do you know this is absolutely going to be a song? Like, how do you start?
I don't know.
Well, you're in the right place.
Thank you and good night.
You don't know until a bit later.
Yeah.
When you have the initial idea, when it goes in whatever the first notebook is, or the first 2 lines that might... Maybe, do you know if it's a
Well,
song?
the thing is, I don't really write, and to date, write that much in the way of fiction. So generally, songwriting, because the books I've written, it's great ways. I've written 2 books about me, which meant, it meant that the research process went like this. Like that.
Right,
Well, I
you
mean,
know.
mine are the same. I mean, there couldn't be any different how I'm going about writing a song and writing a book for me. I mean, my words would be, writing a song would probably be stoned, and writing a book would be chore. So they're very, very... A chore.
Sure.
Yeah, like a chore. Yeah. Or like, it felt like homework or something like that. I really enjoy writing songs, and I find the process sort of like really natural, and it's like, if I sit down to write a song, I enjoy every process about it, especially having the song at the end. Writing the book, I mean, I enjoyed living the stories. I'm telling, similar to yourself, I've never written a creative book as much as I'm just telling the stories that I already know in my head. So it just feels like just a process of getting them down, which isn't particularly enjoyable. I know I'm going to like it when it's down and it's worthwhile, but I did my first book, Drunk Folk Stories, on the train in Germany, because I was by myself for 6 hours every day on the train, or just had so much time alone. I was like, I'm either going to watch Game of Thrones or do something proactive with this time. So I was set about writing the book and just did it, but it was still like, it wasn't like writing a song going, oh wow, that's great, and it sort of bubbled over like that.
Because with the song, you're kind of breaking new ground, whereas you and I both, I know you're different on this, but like you and I both, the books that we've written, it is just kind of like trying to sort of, when you're sitting in the corner of the pub being a drunk raconteur and regaling your friends with a funny story, it's like, right, let's write that down.
I knew exactly what I wanted to say. It's just getting it down, getting it spelt, and in a way that it can be read rather than listened.
Right, but then the thing I was referring to earlier, which I found more challenging, is that at a certain point you realise there's got to be some kind of overarching kind of narrative arc or structure. Yeah. It can't just be
putting it down.
Yeah. Because you can't repeat yourself, do you know what I mean? Just to pick a really basic thing, like if you mention somebody in chapter 1, you don't need to explain who they are in chapter 3 if they mention them again, and little things like that. But it's also, you realise that it's got to sort of have a kind of pacing to it, do you know what I mean? Otherwise it's going to be terrible. That's the bit I found really challenging, is you suddenly got to think about chapter 2 when you're writing chapter 9 a little bit, do you know what I mean? And you're not kind of writing...
And reading it back is like...
One of the major things I discovered, because I did an audiobook of my first book and it was terrible, just as in I hated my own prose when I was reading it out. And the guy recording it went, well, didn't you read it out when you were writing it? And I said, no. And he said, well, that's what everyone does. And I went, no, it isn't. I didn't do it. And apparently that is, would you say that's a thing people...
Would definitely, yeah. Like,
right,
really
thanks for telling me.
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Do you think that gets in the way, though, the fact you're thinking about that while you're writing? You're sort of going, I know this has to have an arc, I know it has to have all these points, it has to make sense. Like, does that...
I think it's important to have that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Surely.
Yeah.
Like, it's important to think of it as a whole. Again, that's something different with a book being such longer than a song. It really is, for me anyway, it's like completely, everything about it is different. I mean, like, I wouldn't have a couple of beers and a spliff when I was sitting down to write a chapter of the book,
Yeah.
you know, where you would
Yeah.
with a song. It's just a completely different sort of mindset.
Making music is profoundly social, so even if you write a song alone, it's pretty soon in the process where you start sharing it with the people you work with, and also even just people listening, the people you love. You know, as soon as you've got kind of your first draft,
Yeah.
and that might be like an hour and a half later, you're like sharing it, and it becomes a kind of, at least partly a collaborative process, or at least a shared process. My experience of writing full length has been, it is properly solitary, and it almost has to be. Maybe other writers are different, but for me it's like, that's weeks. That's like basically weeks of doing a job where you're totally on your own.
Yeah.
And that can be cool. That can be really great if you've got a beautiful place to go and you aren't having to, I mean, if you're lucky enough not to have to go and do another job, and so it's happening at 4 a.m. or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, both my books came from having time, because the second one was
Yeah.
written in COVID. You know, so it was like, I've got some time again. It was like, I'm sat on the train or I'm sat at home. What should I do with this time?
Yeah.
Turn it into a book.
Did you write on the road?
I did the first book I did, Rode Me With My
I
Feet.
don't know how you did that.
Well,
That's amazing.
because the thing with that actually is that I started writing down some stories when we were doing van tours in America. So there's a lot of time just sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah.
As opposed to a bus tour where you travel while you sleep and you wake up in the next place. So I'd written sort of about a third of what then became the book, and then did nothing with it for a couple of years, and then I got asked if I'd like to write a book about tour memoirs, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm ahead of the game. I'm gonna impress the teacher. Do you know what I mean? I'm gonna be like, I'm just gonna turn in 80 pages straight away," which I did, and then didn't turn in anything else for ages after that.
Right.
So there was, because the deadline thing I think is an interesting part of it as well. Because did you write to a deadline?
Only one that I've given myself
Yeah.
that was going to sort of make sense for it to be released. But I mean, who else? Everything I do is independent.
Yeah,
so
right.
Who else am I going to create a deadline?
Yeah.
But I reached the deadline. Yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
going to have it done by the end of the year, and I did.
I find, I mean, I don't know how you feel about this. I find that in all creativity, deadlines are amazing.
Yeah.
They're so
Definitely.
because otherwise you can just dawdle forever. I'll get to it next week. I'm still gathering my thoughts.
Oh no, I'm all for a self-imposed deadline.
Yeah,
As you can see
yeah.
from how I release my music. You know.
Yeah.
So I think to ask you about that deadline piece as well, like that deadline means that it's finished, right? So how do you know that something's finished? How do you know a song's finished or a book is finished? What is it about your process that you go, right, that's it, down tools, I'm done? Or do you ever know?
There's a few different markers, certainly for the book. I mean, like there was the book where it's like, I've done now other people, and now I'm going to need help. It's been a secret up until now, but Frank actually edited my second book.
Now we know.
I'd say proofread.
No, you edited it.
Okay,
No
right.
one else edited it. After my first book, I sent it to Frank early on, and he read it. I think he got back to me 7 hours later.
I read it in one sitting.
Yeah, and
It's a very
7
good
hours
book. It's
later,
very
and
good.
was like, it was amazing. Here are your problems. You said Kurt Cobain died in the wrong year, blah, 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 blah. And like little sort of practical things that I'd got wrong in the book. And I was like, okay, well, that's very handy, blah, blah. And I was like, any spelling mistakes you'd like to point out? And he sort of like, and I did have someone that I paid to kind of edit that first one. And then the second one come around, again, it was COVID. At the time, Frank and I were working on one of my records. We were seeing quite a lot of each other. And I was like, I know you're not doing much. Can you edit this book? And he was like, yeah, sure. I'll proofread it. And I was like, and check out for spelling mistakes and blah, 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 blah. And he did, you know. And I mean, I get pulled up. There's a great spelling mistake in my first book on the 6th page where it says, we talk about Nambucca, actually, and it says sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I missed out a comma between sex and drugs. And so I can talk my way out of that one. Because people were like, I was like, you think I'm supposed to be a comedy? You never had sex, drugs? You're like, I was like, that is on you. But I never get pulled up for too many in foolhardy. So, but I didn't let Frank take credit for editing it because I wanted his foreword. Back to the ending point. So it's like there's when I was like, I'm done with it. I never want to see it or read it again, but I know I'm going to have to put it through another process. Blah, 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 and then get other people to proofread it and do the things. My mum always proofreads them as well, and then send it. To be honest, it's not really done until the book arrives. And again, I almost get more nervous with the books arriving. I've done so many records now. I still get excited when the vinyl arrives at home and you pull it out and it's like a physical thing. But with books, I'm so nervous that there's like, some books just look like you made them yourself, and they just look naff. And it's like, you just wouldn't put it on your bookshelf. And I was just, the first book come through, I was using a proper printing company, and I did everything I thought to make it legit, but I was like, it might turn up as an absolute piece of shit. And it come out and it was like, it's real! It's a real book! And, it was better than any feeling I'd had from a record arriving,
I distinctly remember the feeling that you could not only can you give it to your family for Christmas, your first book or whatever, but it's like more so than a vinyl that you can attack your enemies with it. You know what I mean?
It has real heft.
Yeah, it's got more weight than a vinyl. It's just like, not that I've ever done that, just for the record. But yeah, it is really satisfying getting the finished thing, right?
And then it's done.
Yeah. Then it's done.
And if it's got a spelling mistake in it, then fuck it. You know, like.
Have you done audio? You've done audiobooks, right?
Yeah.
Have you done audiobooks?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
It's
That's a
utterly
horrible
torturous.
process.
Sucks. Yeah.
I did for the second audiobook, I was recording it to a deadline, and I'd made the way I did it was I was like, if I make a mistake, I'll just go back and start again. And when I was editing it, talk about liking the smell of your own shit. I was at home listening to myself telling my own stories back to me through my headphones. And I'd make I'd make like an error, and then I'd spend 2 minutes editing the error, and I'd go forward, and the fucking old me would make the same mistake again, and I'd fix it again, and then I'd go forward. And at one point, I made the same mistake for the third time after editing all 3 of them, and I screamed, and then old me in the original recording screamed at the same fucking time. In the headphones, and I'm like, and I was like, I'm fucking going out, I'm going out. And and I just did the audio book for my new book, and I'd learned a lot from, with that one, I said it's going to take longer, but I just read it without recording it, and then went in for it and did each chapter like that, and it was a lot. Like, I've definitely learned, but it's a horrible thing. You feel so self-indulgent. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Did you do the next one as well?
Yeah, I've done both. I mean, they did at one point, I'm not sure I've ever told you this, they said, for the second one, they said, you don't have to be the person who reads the audiobook. We get someone like Jay to do it. And I was like, I'm not going to fucking make Jay read my audiobook. I think, particularly given the nature of the book, it would be kind of ludicrous.
I am Frank.
yeah, right. Well, there's a Bill Bryson audiobook that's not read by Bill Bryson, which, given the sort of first-person nature of the narrative, is just ludicrous.
Weird,
It's strange, isn't it?
I got asked to do another audiobook. I did Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is a traditional English poem.
It's amazing. You read it?
I did it for the
So we can
Faber
buy that?
Classics. You can.
That's brilliant.
I don't think anyone has. But that, yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure why I signed up to do that, because it was really hard, because it's got some weird names in it. So.
Like hints at Old English everywhere. And
Yeah. They're all called sort of Lancelot and stuff. Yeah. Elves, by the way. This one thing's reading my first book, what I was saying about reading it out, I use the word really way too much. And because it's a double L word, you get, I was really just, and you start going bleh after a while. It's horrible. Yeah.
How do you keep your voice? See, actually, genuinely, as an audiobook listener, I'm listening to you guys talking about this, and I'm like, how do you actually keep your voice the same the whole way through? Is it the stopping? Do you honey and lemon it? What is it? What do you do to like?
You put a massive compressor on it afterwards, and it makes it all sound safe.
I mean, it generally just does sound the same.
Yeah.
Because. Do you not do it in order, or did you do it in order?
I did it in order.
Yeah, so it must be a good friend.
Yeah, but then it's funny, actually, the other thing, you know Ian Winwood? Does anyone here know Ian Winwood? He's an author. You should read his books, they're amazing. I love Ian to pieces, and I'm not trying to sell him down the river by saying this, but he enjoyed reading his own audiobook so much. He was like, I'm having the best time. I'm reading my own prose to myself for hours. And I was just like, that's Ian.
Maybe he just plays that to himself in the bath as well, which is just,
It's that thing about prose being a thing, isn't it? Like, for a lot of books that are, like memoir, and also quite a lot of the stuff I write, the prose isn't the sort of real heart of it. There is the thing you're telling, the story you're telling.
The words,
but for so maybe Ian's like a real prose
He
stylist.
is a prose stylist, but that's actually funny that you mentioned that, because one of the problems I have, particularly with the first book that I did, is that not long after I wrote it, I got really, really into initially Clive James and then into sort of the great prose stylists, as both people writing about prose style and then also people who've just written beautiful prose. And I read that and then sort of went back to my book and went, oh.
I got out the van.
Yeah. Then I did this. Then I did that. And the other one was, have you read James Fernley's book about the Pogues?
Oh, I haven't.
If anyone's not, that's one of. Well, he did a creative writing course before he did it. And it's one of the best written, just as in the joy of the actual prose. It's an absolutely sumptuous book. It's completely amazing. And again, and Franz Nicolai. Is anyone familiar with Franz Nicolai? His books are beautifully written, like proper. I read Humorless Ladies of Border Control shortly after reading my book and just went, that's a proper book. It's sort of...
You're too harsh on yourself. Humorless. I mean, he always was like, he has that kind of, what's the phrase, like the liberal arts elite in the United States, sort of, what's it called, East Coast, New Hampshire type vibe.
Yeah. But it's proper writing.
But it's self-aware that it's proper writing.
Yeah, sure.
I bet Franz Nicolai loves doing his own audiobooks.
I'm going to tell him you said
Franz.
that.
Just kind of bringing you back to like that process part as well. So Jay, we talked a little bit about the DIY process in itself, and you were talking about there when you receive the book. Tell me a bit about, people might not know what that actually involves. What does it involve?
One thing I did want to talk about today, especially with the nature of sort of Lost Evenings, the DIY aspect of just sort of like, the practicalities of writing and releasing a book and how easy it is. I mean, especially as someone that's so used to, at the time I'd written my first book, I think I'd made and released like 11 albums, and just like that comes at... writing the songs is lovely, but the actual, the recording, the making of the vinyl, everything is quite expensive and quite long. I do love it, but when you go to books, the actual bit, the creative bit, you can work on Word documents or Google Docs or whatever. It's not going to cost anything, not going to involve anybody else. Just sit down and do it, and that's the bare essential of creating the whole thing. After that, I use a company called Clay's. It says it's published by Play on Words Publishing, but there's basically printers called Clay's, incredible people. You send them the word. You send Word documents to have. It's called a typeset, and then they put that down. They turn it into the correct font and make it look like a book. Costs about £100, and then you send it to the printers, and then they, you do a bit, send them the artwork. And sometimes like 2 weeks later, your books arrive and they look legit. And it costs each book from a new book, they're £3 a book, and there's like, and that's it. It's cost literally fuck all. And then you get £3 a book that you send at £10. There's no VAT. You don't have to, if you're sending them overseas, you don't have to pay certain taxes on it or whatnot. And they also, books for me, after I wrote, obviously I wouldn't have done it if there wasn't a sort of creative aspect and felt like I had something to say. But after the first book, it fit. At a time when I was touring and CDs were the kind of be all and end all for life on the road, because that you could fit a bunch of them in your bag. They were a tenner. People wanted to buy them, and you could sign them. They weren't like vinyl that if you leave out in the sun or if you look, it's expensive and they have to be treated well. You can bung them in the back of the van. When CDs trailed off, I had books that fit that £10. You can sign it. They're hard wearing, and they were good on the road. And it just sort of like it kept me. And plus, people were like, "Oh wow, you've written a book. I'll buy that." I'll listen to your music on Spotify or whatever. It's hard to everybody. I'm not going to get into how hard it is for artists or whatever, but there's a huge, that book thing was just, it completely, at the time my daughter was born, and it was just like, literally, I'd got to stop doing all the work I'd doing in pubs and all of the other aspects and concentrate solely on Beans on Toast, mainly because of what I learned through doing that first book. And it's just like, it's so, I couldn't believe how sort of accessible and easy it was to turn it around and actually have a book in your hands to sell, basically. Yeah.
It's amazing. Do either of you have anything to kind of add to that process?
Well, because I was going to say I'm sort of did the major label version of book publishing. I was with Headline Publishing, but what was nice about that, this guy called Richard Roper got in touch, who's now a novelist, and his novels are great. And sort of we talked about the book, and we did it, and we went back and forth a lot with editing, and I learned about the bit of Word where you can have comments, which was an aspect of that I never did when I was temping. And we went back and forth, and there was there's a grammar read. The legal read was fun. Enjoyed that. Lawyer had a read and came back and went, oh dear, because there's really specific laws in the UK about talking about illegal activity, by which I'm obviously talking about drugs.
Or talking about me buying drugs in one of your books.
No, but the thing is, I didn't, because the thing about it is you can't say that somebody bought drugs. You can say that they had drugs or that drugs arrived, but you can't say that they bought them. So there's lots.
I'm pretty sure you say that I scored in every city on the whole tour.
Oh, yeah. Well, you did. I always remember that, the last day of that. On the first day of the tour, you announced you're going to score in every city of the tour. It was like a 3-week tour. And on the last day, you got up on stage and you told the spiel again, and you were a broken man. And you were like, I said I was going to score.
But I did it.
Yeah, no. On the last day, you were like, please, can it be weed? Anyway, but there was also, but yeah, then you can if you change people's. I think part of the way I got those
beans on toast, right?
Exactly, rather than your full name, which will remain a secret. I had a fun bit where they were like, well, look, you've either got to change this story or you can change people's names. So I texted the people involved and said, what do you want to be called? And I have an Irish friend, and I really, really enjoyed calling him Seamus because it annoyed the piss out of him. He was like, you arsehole. But yeah, so there was that sort of went through, but the nice part about the process was we had a launch party for it, and at the launch party, and he never mentioned this, Richard, my editor, turned around and went, I'm like the biggest fan of your music. And I was like, what? He'd been really sort of professional and just like,
nice.
Be a good author and everything. And then just at the launch party, he was like, I'm a die-hard fan, showed me his tattoos and everything. And I was like, what the fuck? I had no idea. It was really
do you think you would have put it out if they didn't approach you?
Probably at some point, but like I say, I had sort of written the start of it and had sort of thought about it as a process. But this is kind of what I was saying about deadlines. It was just a file sitting on my laptop for ages that I'd never done anything with. And then when he approached and said, look, we've got an actual kind of machine that will do this, we put it out. This is, I don't know how many Scottish people are in the room, but this is, I'll mention this. We put out that first book, and there was a big campaign about it. And what always happens with musicians' books is that you do really well in the sort of charts or whatever in week one, and then you disappear forever. But in week one, I knocked Alex Salmond's autobiography off the top spot. and then no one bought it ever again. Then next week it was like number 249.
Before I take us into the world of AI, I can't believe that's where I'm going, but Chris, did you have anything you wanted to add to that process side of things?
Because have you worked with publishers?
Yeah, I suppose one thing to say is if you're going to sell between 50 and 5,000 of your book or your pamphlet or your zine, you'll make a lot more money if you do it the DIY way, right up to sort of thousands. But if you're going to sell more than 5,000 up into the sort of big numbers, then maybe it's a much better thing to approach an agent and do the publishing thing. But the other thing I was churning away was that in a way music you have to do, well, you don't have to, but there's a sort of sense of one or the other, like either a band is signed and they've got management and they're blah, 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 or a band is DIY. But I think increasingly in publishing the written word, you can be doing the DIY thing and you can have your proposals and your first drafts with agents at the same time. And in fact, that's the sort of scenario I'm in right now, where there's like 3 proposals being chucked around agents, and at the same time I'm like, I'm going to put a zine out before Christmas. And there's no problem with like, I'll publish this thing now, because the publishing world still takes ages compared to the music world to get something out. Right. Quite often, especially with novels, they're coming out 2 years after they were handed in. So there's this kind of quite a lot of authors I know who are well known enough to have decent publishing deals and have books out that you might have heard of, find themselves with this sort of financial dip that's quite terrifying for them, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
And so if you've got So one of the ways the DIY thing can work is like, oh, so I'm trying to work towards this big novel, but at the same time, here's 3 poetry pamphlets and a bit of memoir and an essay about something. Let's get them out there, and that works. That works really well. Like the sort of what would be the phrase? Like portfolio, release, juggling stuff.
And journalism stuff as well, right?
Yeah. And agents and publishers won't help you with journalism at all. They're not interested unless you've got like a short essay collection or something. They're not bothered about that. It's, I mean, just like any creative industry, there's like, we could sit here and tell a really bleak story about how incredibly hard it is and blah, blah, blah. And without denying that, there's such joy in thinking, oh, I'm really interested in this topic, I'll write something about it. And then now you can just go, oh, put it out. Sell 100 copies to my friends, or sell 3,000 copies to everybody that's interested in that thing. Is really fun. Yeah.
I think that's what's amazing listening to the 3 of you as well. Like, each of your journeys is really different. But when we talk about, I hate the word process because you go into that process as a thing that has a start and an end, right? But all of you sound like the entire thing is a generally joyful experience for you. There may be pain points, I imagine, but it generally is something that you have a lot of love for. And I suppose, are there any budding authors, potential actual authors in this room? So is this helpful for you to know the process?
Probably like best-selling genre writers sat out there.
Listen to these idiots.
What are they talking about? I mean, I think just going into we've talked about how you feel and kind of what is happening when you're going through that process, but what about, right, we're now in the world of AI. It's arrived. The feelings that I have around it are guilt and hatred and sometimes love. I mean, I have such a disconnected relationship with it, and then I really need it. Sometimes it's kind of like a shit relationship, to be honest. But how do you feel about AI? Like, do you use it, each of you?
Yeah, well, there's a chapter in my new book. So my new book, Wild Folk People, which I have some copies on me for sale, it's about, each chapter is about a song that I've written about a person. So be that my friend Lauro, who's a great artist who I wrote a song about a few years ago, blah, blah, blah. And each chapter is about how I met that person, and then it says the lyrics to the song, and it talks about the adventure that the song went on afterwards. And recently I wrote a song about AI. So I was like, as much as it's about people, I'm going to write a chapter about AI, because I also have lots of thoughts and feelings and see it as such an important part of human history. I think it's going to change everything about books in the same way it's going to change everything about everything. So I wanted to get my side of it out, and you can read about how I feel about it in the chapter. And then but my main thing about moving forward, I think AI is great as long as there's an element of transparency. Yeah. You know, I think if you're talking to a robot, if you're listening to a robot's song, or if robots are making political or medical decisions, then you should know about that. And then I go on in the chapter to explain that this book, the the one that you're reading now, I wrote completely different to my first 2 books. I didn't have time on a train or a COVID lockdown to write it, but I had the idea for the book. So this one I dictated. I literally took my phone, pressed record, and I went, I met Lauro, blah, 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 and just talked into it, and then I cut and pasted it into ChatGPT, and I said, make it flow, and make sure the spelling and is correct. And it did it in 2 seconds. I didn't have to get Frank to edit it.
I'm out of a job. First casualty of AI.
Exactly, he's gone. And it was just like, and it was, if anything, because I had to, a few times I'd be like, no, I don't want you to come up with any new things. I just want you to get what I've done there. And I sacked it off in the end, but my original plan was, because I was like, at the end of the chapter about AI, I said, and by the way, the verse you wrote, the chapter you read before this, didn't happen, wasn't real, and was completely written by AI. And I gave instructions then for it to write a chapter, which it did. And to be honest, as with anything, it was actually a bit shit. If that chapter would have been good, I would have left it in. If it was sort of more believable, but it just felt a bit sloppy. So I was just like, I ended up not having it. But my initial plan was to lull people into a false sense of security, and then be like, oh yeah, I hate AI. Oh, what do you mean? That was actually quite my favourite chapter of your book, motherfucker. So I think like transparency is important, but I think, but what I think will happen, and what I want to happen, and what I think will happen polar opposites. You know, I think loads of people will be releasing books that they haven't written. I think we'll just I think most things that we already read, and things like, you know, speeches at funerals and stuff like that, I think it will zap a strange thing away from us, because, you know, like at first glance it says some pretty clever shit. So.
It looks fine, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How do you feel about AI, Chris?
Yeah, I haven't written anything with AI. I haven't really even played with ChatGPT at all. Funnily enough, AI is really good with. I make a lot of podcasts and do a lot of production stuff, and so I use some of the sound design tools and the isomalting and all that sort of stuff, and feel a bit ashamed when I'm doing that, because basically all the people that spent enormous amounts of time making beautiful microphones and building recording studios are obsolete now. But yeah, I haven't really experienced writing with it. It genuinely makes me feel icky. It feels like this is on the scale of the Industrial Revolution, right? This is huge, absolutely gigantic. And then in history, when the Industrial Revolution happened, there was a long gap before there was a welfare state that was built up to cope with what the Industrial Revolution had done. And that time was pretty dark. I mean, I know there was Napoleonic Wars as well. Sorry, I'm sort of doing Frank's thing of doing history. So what frightens me about it all is that we're into that period where we don't have a welfare state that can cope with what's about to happen with AI. Yeah. That's not really a very helpful thing to tell you at a book conversation. I've just produced an album, right, for a friend, and we finished it, and the whole premise of the album is one of those natural albums, like we did it all in a room, and everyone played together, and there was very little, like, minimal overdub. It was one of these kind of Big Thief style, like, let's just make a record as authentically, organically as possible. And then the mixing engineer came back and we decided to write on the album sleeve, like, no software, click tracks or AI were used in the making of this record, slightly smugly. And then the mixing engineer said, well, I did iSmart all the vocals with AI, so there's AI on this really natural sounding record. And I was like, how did that happen? My contribution isn't very useful. What's your...
I'd say the thing, in terms on a personal level, I'm just sort of in this completely unhelpful way. I'm just sort of largely trying to ignore AI and just sort of pretend it's not happening.
That's exactly what I'm doing, yeah.
I enjoy the fact that ChatGPT means cat just farted in French. And apparently the news in France is endlessly hilarious at the moment. There was one thing, there was a kind of vogue for a second when people were feeding lyrics by writers into AI engines and getting them to write a song in the style of, to be like, look at that. Well, yeah, and Nick Cave wrote about that at length, but like someone did it, well, a couple of people did it for me and said, oh, look, it's like one of your songs. And I found it an interesting exercise because it was like, the result of this is useful because it demonstrates what the spark of creativity is. And this, I'd say, in fact, it's probably better if I talk about somebody else's stuff rather than mine, but it's like you look at the AI-generated Nick Cave lyrics, and it's like the difference between this and Nick Cave's actual lyrics is what's good about Nick Cave. Do you know what I mean? Is like the actual, because it's got all the same sort of imagery and sort of cadence and all the rest of it, but it's missing that visceral human thing. And in a way, it's part of me is like, if you can't tell the difference between these two, I don't think you've understood the art of Nick Cave.
Do you not imagine loads of people coming up with just... I think new songwriters will be constantly being like having to convince people that they're not. That they're not. You know, like every time.
Well,
I mean, yeah, it is. But I just like... The cynic in me is just sort of like...
But I think two things. I mean, the worrying part of it for me is, first of all, the rate of improvement and all of this stuff is such that I think that that issue may go away over time. But it's kind of like, if you just think about any great writer, I mean, like, AI, as I understand it, it's a processor of what you feed into it. And most of the great art, to pick a pretty random example, one of my favorite records ever, which was utterly life-changing for me as a writer, was It's All Crazy, It's All False, It's All a Dream by the band Me Without You. I don't know if everyone knows that. Yes, thank you. And what's startling about it is how totally insane the lyrical subject matter is. It's basically a series of Aesop's fables fed through a Kabbalist lens to tell stories about animals that are also about the soul after death. And it's like, unless somebody's already done that ChatGPT can't come up with it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like the spark, or John K. Sampson writing songs about Bigfoot and trees, and you know, it's the sort of it's the surprise almost of the subject matter. You know, if you want AI to write a love song, that's pretty doable, I suspect.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But if you want it to write a song that's going to knock you sideways with its originality, I don't think it's yet at a point where it's about to do that. I suppose you could come up with an original prompt for AI and be like, write a song about Jay's hat or something. I don't know.
I wonder if people like us,
I'm
especially
gonna do
you,
that.
will get hired as prompt engineers. Like, there'll be a kind of cachet with, I'm going to make an album with AI, and I've hired Nick Cave and Frank Turner to be the songwriter, the prompt engineers.
Yeah.
And then that'll be one part of our portfolio.
Chris,
What does it pay?
terrifying.
What's the hours?
I don't know. It could be pretty lucrative. couldn't
But
it?
it's still, I mean, with like the image generation, it's just like when you stand there, again, I talk about this in the book, and it's like you can type whatever you can get a picture of whatever you want, but you still have to have an idea about what you want it to come up with, if you know what I mean,
Sure.
at the very start of it.
Yeah.
So.
It doesn't threaten the act of creativity, and the act of creativity will only benefit from this added tool and this added weird thing. But of course, what it threatens is livelihoods of the people that support creative people, and that includes that's all of us.
Well, and there's stuff like, I know quite a few people who make library music for kind of films and TV shows and stuff like that, and I think they're
See that?
Yeah.
tossed.
Yeah.
I think it's quite fascinating that it came for the arts first, though. I think everybody thought, well, the robots are coming and they'll do all the labour, you know, like or the sort of accountancy jobs or whatever, and it's just like we're going to paint pictures and write songs. It's like, all right, fucking hell.
Yeah, but then that's an interesting thing though, because at the risk of sounding sort of pretty bitter, like there's the whole thing when it sort of comes to downloading as an issue, which the music industry went through that kind of convulsion quite a long time ago now, and we've come up with less than perfect solutions to it and all the rest of it. But there was sort of I remember a moment when suddenly that sort of, because of the download rates and everything, that sort of came for TV, and lots of people on TV were like, it's a disaster. And it was like, you're the people who was telling me that Napster's the, you know, just it's just new adventures in technology and the rest of it about 5 years ago.
Right.
We've already been through this, piss off, deal with it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that there's a similar thing going on. I've seen people I know who work in kind of like legal world and stuff like that, and AI is sort of coming for quite a lot of those more actuarial jobs and all the rest of it. And it's like, yeah, but you were posting about how cool AI art is and how interesting ChatGPT.
Yeah, well, I mean, art especially. I mean, art has always felt like it had a massive gateway, and they've spent the last fucking 10 years telling everyone that art can be anything. And then it's like, well, this isn't art. And it's like, you said it was. You know, like, and art reached the point where it's sort of like, it always felt like not everyone could do it. And now it's like, you just fucking type it in and it comes up, and look, put that on a wall.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm going to take us away from the darkness of AI.
Sorry. Anyway.
Purely because...
Back to books.
You started it.
I know I did, and now I regret
In fairness,
it so
Jay,
much.
in fairness, I suggested that might be a topic you had something to say about.
It's like, I think, like, I did hear a lovely man called Mo Goddard talk about it, and talk about how if we collaborate with it and we actually try and teach it to be kinder, then maybe that is the way forward. So I'm going to leave you with that.
But then there's also Elon Musk's chatbot.
Let's not go there, Frank. Come on. If you could, now you all know each other well, right? So if you could steal a part of each other's process, or there's something that you really admire about the way that each of you do something, what would it be?
I'd take Frank's ticket sales.
What that really is Frank's focus. I really remember.
Thanks, man. I'm taking you out for dinner after.
Like, I really remember early tours where we were still like touring on the trains and touring just two of us in a car or whatever, and it was the first time I'd ever realised that I was lazy. Well, not lazy, but just slow. And I'd always thought I was really, you know, I'd done sort of 3 or 4 albums in 3 or 4 years, and I was like upcoming and blah blah blah, and having this great time. And then suddenly I was on the road with Frank, and I was so lackadaisical compared to you. You just got shit done, and and I don't just mean admin, but you were a fucking master at admin when you were in your 20s. It was incredible. But also,
Have I fallen off now? I don't know.
I don't know, maybe you still are. But the creative side.
Also, I don't think it's the admin that sells the tickets. I think it's the songs.
You're also coming for dinner now.
the creative side as well of being like grabbing like the night where you're just, we were staying in pretty rough places and then still getting the guitar out and going, I'm hearing this song, I've just got to finish this bit of the song, and then we've got a gig the next day.
Yeah, but you contributed to that. I always remember this. When I was writing Rivers in a youth hostel in Austria
I was even
with
thinking
you,
about that.
and I had different rivers. It says the Mississippi and the Rhine and stuff, and I had something else in. You were like, "That's not good enough." You told me how to get a better. Yeah, you told me to get.
I can't imagine now being that audacious.
Yeah. No, I had a different river. I think it wasn't the Mississippi. It was somewhere else. It was some. I don't know what it was. But you were just like, that's a crap river.
Well,
Get
Francis,
a better river.
I'll tell you what I think you should do.
No, but it was amazing. But I mean, to jump in and to answer the question from my end, the first thing I'd say is that I have already taken a lot from both of the people on this stage. I started playing acoustic guitar because of Jay. Many people know this, but it's a fucking fact. Seeing you play late night when I was playing in obscure anti-historical bands, I was like, fucking hell, this is really cool. So, and like, there's a lot of my, particularly earlier songs, but still, so let's reveal. I'm going to play Tattoos tonight. Tattoos is a fucking Beans on Toast song. It just is a Beans on Toast song, right? So's Real Damage, so's Thatcher Both the Kids. They're all fucking Beans on Toast songs. Anyway, yeah. But also, I remember like the way that you write made such a huge impact on me in a similar way that Jay was sort of saying. But and I read your most recent book and I read it quite quickly. I finished it and was just absolutely drowned in this sense of like, fuck, because you still tour in a more kind of like off-piste kind of way compared to a lot of what I do, it's tour bus and academies. Do you know what I mean? And that's fine, but it's because it's playing to as many people as you can in the most accessible way possible and blah, blah, blah. But I was just reading stories about, sort of being in Wild Place and the rest, and I was like, fuck, I miss that. And
come on out.
Yeah. Let's do it. There we go. This is how deals get done. And again, like listening through to your catalogue and stuff, particularly once you announced, is it sold out, the London show?
Yeah.
How many others are you doing?
How many?
Are you doing other shows?
No.
Do other shows.
That's very kind.
I had a bit of a deep dive back through your stuff, and it was just, there's so much kind of, what I was saying earlier about John Kay and the Me Without You and stuff, it's just like, I was listening to Ankles and thinking, what a fucking idea for a song. That's a great idea for a song. Or indeed Drafts or Seven Hearts, or, there's so many songs where I'm just like, my favourite feeling as a writer is when you hear a song written by somebody else, particularly if it's a friend, and you go, God damn it, that's a great idea for a song. Why don't I have that idea for a song?
I want to say something that isn't about the creative thing at all, but it's about ethics and the spirit of... I adore the spirit of... Like, yes, part of me would have loved to have had Frank's success, as they call it, but, just the audience and the ticket sales, and it's amazing. There is an effort that goes into, and you get there, and then you sort of have to live with it, which is the weirdest thing. Hello. But I have, like Jay, the spirit of, like, you never compromised, because it wasn't a compromise, because it was true joy.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just unbelievable, and so I would never go back to the industry. Not that. There's lovely parts of the industry. It's not. I don't mean that in a kind of it's a demon sort of way, but every time we cross paths, you're doing something interesting. You're in the right place, and you've got the right song for it. Every time, it's just unbelievable, and that's like 25 years on or something, or 20 years. It's just like ridiculous.
How many Aarti?
Pretty incredible.
89 and counting.
I'm actually much happier not making albums and touring as Chris TT. I really, really fell out of love with Chris TT, and I quite often in my private life speak about it like it's a third party, like it's someone like Sasha Fierce, the Beyonce thing. Like Chris TT, I struggle with it.
What was Garth Brooks's Chris?
Oh, Chris Ryan.
Chris Gaines.
That's
yeah.
the one. Chris Ryan is Andy McNabb, isn't it?
I love that you've brought us to a close before questions with Beyonce and Garth Brooks.
Yeah.
Great place to end.
Sure, they've got good books.
Thank you all so much. I feel like genuinely there's so much more I had to ask, and I'm sure so much more everyone would like to hear, but we do have some time for audience questions. So I wonder, before we do that, is there anything that you want to just add before we close off?
Apart from I know Chris has got some books to sell as well.
Oh, yeah.
Please buy all.
Buy their books.
Any questions? Yeah. I think we've got a roving mic, don't we? We do. Thank you.
What's your name? Where'd you come from?
My name is Alex Stein. I'm from Los Angeles, California. Yeah. And this is my third Lost Evenings. And every time I'm here, it inspires me so much. And one of the things that inspired me to do, sorry about doing this, is to finish this book of rock and roll stories I've been working on for years.
Yeah. Oh, this is great. I love this. This is great.
Which is called Rock and Roll Manifesto and Other Stories. And while I am here for the music and the panels and the communities, one reason why I've traveled 5,500 miles to be here is I wanted to give a copy of this book to you, Frank.
Oh, please. Oh, amazing.
Sorry to hijack the panel.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much. That's awesome. That's made my day.
Lovely. Do we have any more questions in the room? Yeah. Lady with wonderful
Brian's in
jacket
charge.
here.
Hi, I'm Noah. I'm from Scotland originally, based in the Netherlands. And I was just going to take us quickly back to the conversation about AI. And I was wondering, as political artists, all three of you, how you marry the interest in the future of AI with the climate impact that it's having on our world right now.
Yeah.
It's a very good question.
That's. No, you go. You know, you use it.
It changed. I mean, in the book, I was like, I didn't know about when I wrote it. I had that was, and I did at the start of the chapter. I was like, by the way, I'm writing this in February 2024, and I know that by the time it's come out, there's already going to be stuff that I didn't know about it, and there's sort of like how much water it uses, aspects of it wasn't aware of at all. I think there'll probably be another song about that. I mean, I don't think. I don't actually think it will slow down the movement of it at all. Unfortunately, the sort of damaging of the planet never seems to be able to stop capitalism in any of its forms. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely things to talk about, but I think it will be a footnote in the story of AI, unfortunately. Or maybe they need to find another power source in general, but it'll eat it up, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I mean, I'm feeling better about not using AI now.
I'm feeling smug that I only use it every now and again, to be fair. Anyone else?
Like anything with...
Going to go for
that's
lady in the front.
personal.
Oh. Oops.
That was fast.
Brian's on the move. He's unstoppable.
I'm very curious, when you're actually in the middle of the creative process, whether it's a song or a book, how conscious are you of your audience?
That's a really good question.
Resisting being conscious of an audience. One of the things that happens when you have to do the book proposal is you have to be very, very conscious of the audience, because a book proposal is largely a great big advert for who's going to buy it and a sort of description of all these people will love this book. And so you have to think about it then. But it's probably best not to try and have a hit, which is the same as music. You know, if you're really trying to have a hit, then you probably won't have a hit, and then you won't like the music as much that you made. Whereas if you, even if you do have a hit, you still don't like the music as much, so then you move on and wish you were doing something else. So the best thing to do is, I think we're all built differently as well as creative people. We all have a different idea of our audience, and especially, as I was going to say, especially younger people. I don't know why I was going to say that, but especially, maybe it's generationally shifting, because younger people are more... hustle culture is a bigger thing now than it was when I was coming through. And also the roles of promotion and marketing and the commercial roles have been blurred with the creative role. But I definitely would suggest trying to keep the hustle out of your creativity and then bring it in afterwards as aggressively as you can.
Yeah, there's a I mean, I think the reason I'm so prolific is I'm just so good at switching that off. When I'm writing songs, I literally don't think about anybody else at all. just thinking about the song, you know, and I can they can come into the picture once the song's finished, but certainly not when I'm writing it. And the book as well, I was just like, I'll write a book. I wasn't like, oh my God, what will people think about this? You know, it's just like cross that bridge when you come to it, you know. And I think that's something I've always found very, very easy, and I think that's hence I can write so many bloody songs.
I mean, it's exactly that, splitting up the kind of hustle part and the creative part. For me, I'm going to talk about Nick Cave again, but he sort of talks about his muse being a delicate thing. He'll run away and get spooked by the hustle kind of thing, which I always loved. But it's like, you know, the word sellout is A, been vastly overused historically, and B, I think younger people don't really care. No. It's fun. I'm going to drop a name. Are you ready? I was having a conversation with Ian Mackay about this, and it just, he sounded, I respect Ian Mackay more than I could possibly say, but when he was talking about selling out culture, he sounded like a Japanese soldier after the war who was still fighting, and it was like, dude, this is over. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But nevertheless, the only workable definition of that term, sellout, that I've ever had is making art for the wrong audience, because the only valid audience is your own best judgment. Right, and it's like you write a song that you think is a good song. Yeah. That might have implications of other people will think this is a good song, but you don't know that because you're not other people. But if you're writing a song to impress your audience, or indeed, you know, the record label or the radio plugger or your partner or your mum or whatever it is, in my opinion, your creative priorities are out of whack. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? You should just be like, what's the best song I can write, or book, or whatever, in my judgment, and do that. And then afterwards, it's a little bit, I always think it's a little bit like, it's what you were saying about writing hits. It's a bit like a magic eye. You sort of have to do it by accident for it to be good. Do you know what I mean? And in fact, the most challenging moment in my career with regard to all of this was after the song Recovery came out and was a big radio hit in the States. It's the siren call moment, because your brain goes, oh, it'd be nice to have another one of them. But the point is, I wasn't thinking about that when I wrote that song, because I had no idea it was going to happen. And in fact, if I had been thinking about it when I wrote that song, it wouldn't be what it is. And so you have to sort of build walls around. That's why I use the word ineluctable. There's this little moment somewhere, this little grotto somewhere that's got a little candle in it, and that's the creative bit. And you don't know what I don't know what happens in there. Do you know what I mean? And you've got to keep it safe, otherwise you're fucked, basically. Do you know what I mean? So, but then of course we do the hustle afterwards, because we're all trying to, you know, pay bills and stuff. So, and communicate, and art is a form of communication.
And you know, as well, once you're happy with the song and you have written it for the right reasons, there's nothing better than other people connecting with it and loving it.
Exactly.
You know, because it's like, oh, that makes me feel this way or whatever. And it's, you know, like,
I'm sorry, I'm going to drop another name. I had a really interesting conversation with Simon from Biff Clyro about this a few years ago, where he was talking about many of horror being on the X Factor, was it? Yeah, and he copped a bunch of flack for that, and he was like, I'd already written the song. The song was done. Yeah. He was like, and then I spent 20 years in a van eating super noodles, and then somebody else covered my song, and I got a bunch of money, and I bought a house. Do you know what I mean? He's just kind of like, fuck anyone who's got a problem with that. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Because the creative part that I was talking about was still sacrosanct. That hadn't been affected by it, you know?
Thank you. We've got time for one more.
Right.
Hi, I'm Ashton from South Carolina.
Hi.
I was wondering, how do you go from, this is going to be phrased really weirdly, but how do you go from knowing what something is about, like maybe you're like, oh, I want to write something about narratives, I want to write something about the theme of brotherhood, to like a genuine plot and like substance of like things happening?
In fictional songs or both?
Either one.
Okay.
I think you come at it the other way around. I think you start, like the big themes aren't the thing you start with. So, or if you've got a thing that you want to write about, a big theme, you kind of put that aside. The plot and the character and the kind of development of a piece of storytelling comes first. Because in a way, really the big themes emerge later in the process. And maybe that's the same with songs as well, that you're writing a song about whatever you're driven to express. And quite often it starts with like just 2 lines of lyric or something.
Yeah.
So if you already say to yourself, well, this is going to be an allegory for the futility of life, you then limit what the rest of it is. Whereas if you just write the rest of it, I mean, one of the things about writing a book that we haven't really touched on is that possibly the single best thing I learned about long-form writing, non-fiction and fiction, is not to try and write it well, first. Like your first draft can be absolutely shit, prose-wise, and you just, because what you're needing to do is splurge the ideas, your character, your story, or the things you want to say about whatever the topic is, and then you go back and it's in the revising, which is in songs as well, isn't it? It's like that.
Yeah.
Although we get closer to a final thing in a song, I think
so, but I think you're right. For me, it's like quite often it's just you write 1 or 2 lines and you're like, I wonder what this is going to be about.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And there are moments. The flip side would be there are. I think it doesn't work with the big themes. Like you say, if you're going to write a song about life or about hope or whatever, that seems a bit nebulous to me and a bit impersonal somehow. There have been things I wanted to write a song about Krista McAuliffe. And it was like, okay. And then, in fact, the whole of the No Man's Land record, it was like I was sort of picking characters and trying to find a way into them through their biographies or whatever. But broadly speaking, it's like, yeah, you just kind of write. You write a couple of lines. We played a song last night called Peggy Sang the Blues, sort of about my grandmother. And I had a dream about my grandmother, and I wrote the first 2 lines. I went, this is kind of interesting. Wonder where this is going. And it ends up being a song about kind of carpe diem or whatever. But I didn't sit down and think, how do I shoehorn my grandmother's ghost into a song about seeing the day?
it's a song about generational wisdom as well, isn't it?
It is,
Yeah.
yes. Thank you, Chris.
But
That's very well put.
You wouldn't have stopped yourself at line 2 where you got the vodka out or whatever the drink, whiskey.
Whiskey,
right?
yeah.
And then you go, oh, this is going to be a song about generational wisdom.
Yeah,
Or,
right.
This is a song about carpe diem.
Yeah.
That comes after you.
Right, totally. I think, yeah, because to slightly repeat what Chris said, if you sort of pre-direct yourself too much at the beginning, then you limit yourself. And it's almost the fun part of songwriting, particularly, is the bit where you're not quite sure where it's going to go. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like...
It's also a bit different between song and song as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate the idea of there having to be a way in which you can do it. Like I've certainly with I've sort of like sat down to write a song and know what it's going to be about.
Sure.
You know, sort of like can't think of anything. Like Send Me a
AI.
Bird, for example. Yeah, or AI. I'm going to write a song about AI. You know, and it was on my mind anyway, and then it just sort of like went through all the process of it. And I guess I sort of like I certainly sort of tricked myself and made myself laugh throughout the song. I didn't know I was going to do that, and it's going to be funnier than I thought, whatnot. But sometimes I can sit down and be like, all right, I know it. I mean, quite often, when I probably sat down to write the AI song, I probably ended up writing another one, and then come back to it.
Yeah.
So, but there's no rules, which is
I'm sorry.
Can I ask you about your unrhyming thing? So you would do the thing where you've got a verse where there's almost you're directing us that there's going to be a rhyme, and then you don't do that, you do something else, the unrhyme.
Yeah, that's an accident. I always thought those words rhymed.
I thought that was a great strategy.
I get pulled up on this all the time. People are like, it's so great because none of the words rhyme. And I was like, which ones don't fucking rhyme? So that's
not a strategy.
That's definitely not a strategy.
The risk, but hold on, at the risk of being slightly pretentious, but also wrapping this up a tiny bit. But that's one of the things that I love about the creative process. I do enjoy literary criticism as a sort of genre, like serious literary criticism. But there is a bit of you that's reading kind of like a précis of The Great Gatsby or whatever, and you wonder how much the author was paying any attention to any of this shit. Well, yeah, they just wrote it, and then there's been 100 years of people finding themes in it, and I really don't think that he sat down and went, here are my themes. Do you know what I mean? He just wrote a book that was a good story, and I think the same, but there's something great about that, and you know, I've said this before, but it's like when somebody says, what's that song about? And it's like, it's about whatever you think it's about. Do you know what I mean? It's absolutely not up to me to dictate what
I think there's a website where people share their meanings behind Neil Young songs. And there's just like, you know, like there's like 150 different meanings.
But that's the sign of a strong song.
Exactly.
In a way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If there's only one possible interpretation of a song, then it's not the most supple thing. It's not the most interesting thing.
Well, I mean, I've got to say, the chicken song is about chicken farming.
But is it, Jay? But is it?
I don't think anybody's ever gone,
read it as a metaphor.
Man, this is what he's really talking about here.
I did. Totally.
I think a good place to be end is that AI could never do any of what we're talking about there. So that's probably, Jeff, to hand over to you. And just to say thank you so much to Frank, Chris and Jay. And thanks for having me here because it's been such a joy.
Thanks to Aarti.
Thank you, Aarti. Thank you.